Go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
The time is now 6:33 p.m. on May 18th, and I am Elmer Fisher, and I will now call to order the board meeting of Manor ISD Board of Trustees. This notice of this meeting has been posted pursuant to mandates of the governor and attorney general to the COVID response and COVID pandemic. The quorum of the board of trustees is present via video conference. Sam Samaripa,
Here.
Anna Cortez,
Here.
Johnny Velasco,
Here.
Tamika Thomas,
Here.
Janie Serna,
Present.
Monique Celadon, Elmer Fisher, present. We'll now move on to our Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Y'all can unmute. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and to the
and
republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
All nations.
indivisible,
with
liberty
And justice for all.
Right. We will now move on to item 3, which is our public forum. The board executive assistant, Carla Rivera, will read any of the items for public comment. Ms. Rivera, will you please go ahead with any comments?
Thank you, President Fisher, members of the board. We have 2 comments this evening. The first comment comes from Catherine Pugh. Her item is related to budget. So her comment goes as follows. Distinguished members of the board, this is a plea on behalf of Manor ISD's libraries. Did you know that a student's engagement in independent leisure reading has a higher correlation to future academic success than any other factor? In other words, students who read on their own time are more likely to succeed, but we need resources that youth want to read: current subjects, popular authors, and the best and most accurate information. MISD librarians are innovative and industrious. We have weathered inadequate funding conditions at many schools by obtaining grants and donations, but that is not a sustainable approach. Strong school districts have strong library programs. While we recognize that the district's current funding situation is murky, we ask the board to explicitly address library needs. We ask you to invest in our students by allocating and protecting funds to refresh our aging book collections and to create 21st century electronic library labs so that students can readily lean into their intellectual curiosity and their need to create and innovate. Through a partnership with the MISD Technology Department, we are confident that we can achieve this vision. Because our community does not have a public library with after-school programming, it is all the more important that Manor ISD's libraries support students in developing their personal growth and interests. We believe that Manor students deserve to have the best libraries in Central Texas. To achieve this, we ask you to 1, allocate designated funding solely dedicated for library resources. 2, encourage strategic community partnerships to make public library access a reality for all Manor ISD students. And 3, demand that all Manor ISD school libraries achieve a Texas State Library and Archive Standards rating of at least proficient, the middle tier rating, by June 2023. Thank you for your consideration. Our second comment comes from Philip Getz, and his item is as follows. This year, members of the Manor American Federation of Teachers organized a petition among educators within the district seeking support from the board to continue our monthly voluntary consultation meetings that have been held with the superintendent over the last 3 years. We have collected over 236 signatures from educators in the district within the month of March 2020 in support of a continued relationship between the organization and the school district. We would like to secure our partnership with you and the future leaders of Manor ISD. And that is all of our comments for tonight's meeting. Thank you. Mr. Fisher, you are muted.
Thank you, caller. We'll now move on to our next agenda item, which will be consent agenda. I will entertain a motion of the consent agenda items A through M, unless something wants to be pulled to be discussed.
I move that we accept consent agendas items A through M as presented.
I have a motion from Mr. Samaripa to accept items A through M. Do I have a second?
I second it.
I have a second from Ms. Thomas. All in favor? Mr. Samaripa,
Aye.
Mr. Mika Thomas,
Aye.
Danny Serna,
Aye.
Johnny Velasco,
Yes.
Monique Celadon, Anna Cortez,
Aye.
Elmer Fisher, aye. And Miss Celadon is on. I don't know if she's,
Yeah, she's on, but I'm not for sure if she can't get her mic off.
Yeah, I don't think she can get her mic to work. Maybe she can write it in the chat.
She said aye.
okay. So let it show that it passes 7-0. We will now move on to information items. And the first information item will be the monthly financial report. And the presenters will be the finance department.
So this is Ellen Scoviera, and first of all, let me begin by saying hello, because I haven't met all of you. And I'm your interim business manager, and Art is not able to be here tonight, so I will be presenting these items. So this is the monthly report that we present you regularly. And as you can see, the spending pattern has remained about the same. And since the decision was to continue paying staff, then we're not seeing any major adjustment other than some, less spending with substitute teachers, but we are also affording premium pay to people who are coming in. So the good news is that it does look like we're tracking to not have a deficit this year, so that's favorable. Other than that, things are kind of perking along, and the expenditures we've had have been in support of remote learning and keeping things clean for everyone. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to information item B, which is budget discussion. And finance department again.
Okay, so let me give you a face to go with that voice. Greetings to you all. I'm happy to be here, and I did include in the packet pretty detailed information. This is a very, very odd budget year because we didn't have most of the rest of the spring semester. We've been off. We've been moved to remote instruction, trying to create new curriculum, and everyone working off site. We had started working on the budget, meeting with people before all of that happened. I appreciated the comments about the library because that's something that is on our list as a priority. And Karen Chapitin, whom I think you know is our budget coordinator, and she has, I think the first day I walked in the door, she started talking about we need library books. So that is something that we know we need to focus on, but it also is among many things that we need to focus on. So as we went through the spring without knowing what our enrollments are going to be for the coming year, what our attendance is going to be, if we're going to even open on time, the superintendent said, I think at this point, the most sensible thing we can do is to carry over the budget that we have this year. And then as we get into the summer, you'll be having new leadership and likely that person will want to weigh in on priorities. And we did also implement Cardonics, which is a master scheduling software that will yield to us what the efficiencies might be within our master schedule in relation to staffing. So about 80 some odd % of our budget is people. And so we'll be looking at, I think the high school master schedule part should be done towards the end of this week. Middle school was done towards the end of last week. And then we'll be conferring with the HR department to take a look at where are we relative to what we think. This particular year, we did not get the same amount of enrollment as was projected. So we've been running short throughout the year. So, and coming into next year, it's going to be a wild card. You know, I get everything from there will be more because people will pull their children back from specialty schools that maybe they don't have quite as much money to pay the tuition, to people are going to move away with families, or families are going to move in together. You're going to have more. Certainly it will be different. Even the Texas Education Agency is just saying it's a wild card on talking about different calendars, et cetera, that I know the superintendent has addressed with you. So right now you do one thing, they have a lot of waivers that they've permitted schools to do. One of the waivers they did not put in place, however, is the requirements to have a budget prepared and adopted. So I understand the board wanted to have a budget workshop, and we've proposed June 1 to follow by a few days an academic workshop. You have invested money in a couple of programs, one called New Tech, one called Breakthrough, that have been very effective for our scholars. And there had been discussion prior to my coming about that expanding to additional campuses. So while we intended to recommend to the board rolling what we did this year and then amending it as we needed, and as we have a better sense of what funding will be, the question of does this board want to continue to expand in those areas? So thus the request for an academic workshop. If in fact you expand in those two areas, then the numbers that you see tonight would actually be, would go up by roughly $266,000 if you expand. Now, there are a lot of other things that need to see the light of day, which will be bearing for discussion in the summer. You know, we have property liability insurance that went up, and you know, I'm not sure if we're going to be running as many buses this year. The state aid or the state contract price for gas went down. So there's just all of those sorts of details that go into constructing a budget. So basically what we're bringing to you tonight is the same budget as this year. I'm not HR, but my understanding is HR from talking with the superintendent feels that with the economic situation in our community that recommending a raise at this time is not something that they want to do. So if that's a conversation you want to have, we could certainly get into that at the budget workshop. So I was recommending June 1 for that. So that if you have decided which direction you want to go, then we can run an advertisement in the local paper, which runs on Friday, and that would run June 5th. We have to give no more than 30 and no fewer than 10 days of notice. Your regular meeting is June 15th. So that's why the times we suggested were structured to permit you to act by June 5th, and then we could advertise it and then have the hearing. We would call the budget hearing at the meeting of June 1 as well. So you still have some wiggle room. If you don't choose to do any of that, then you know we still would have time. Doesn't have to be June 5th, but to keep us on course. And if there is not a whole lot of discussion associated with it, then that's why we made that recommendation.
So I have some questions. Dr. Avery, were you about to go?
Yeah, I was going to extend a huge thank you to Ellen and her staff and Art. I mean, they've tried to kind of grab as much information from the state as possible as we navigate through the budget process. And so I wanted to kind of, extend that thank you out to them, because I think it's one of those you don't know until you kind of start, unpulling the covers over those numbers and trying to kind of make sense of them all. But they've done a super job of trying to keep everybody focused on, the bare minimum of what we need to spend, especially trying to recoup everything we can from this year's budget, knowing that we're going to go into a very shortfall of a budget next year. So again, thank you for that. And so in the academic meeting and the budget meeting, that's where the board will decide on what you guys are wanting to do. We can give you the scenario behind the scenes with the terrain of budgets across the state and what we're anticipating, but you guys will help determine the final decisions on that budget process. It should be a very rich conversation, the meetings that we have with those two meetings. Yes, ma'am.
So again, I agree with you. Thank you, because it's very uncharted territory. So we'll all be interested. In the budget meeting, I'm just 1 of 7, but I would like to see what it would look like to give, to be able to give a raise. I mean, when we look at it, we're already sometimes 7% below other districts. So one of the things we have to do is be able to keep and retain our teachers. The other thing is, if we can look at what the budget would look like if we increased the after school programs, but in the event that, we don't go back to school until December, does that mean we pay those programs regardless for that first semester, or can we approve it? And if we don't use the services, do we still pay for it?
Me personally, I think that's just a conversation that you can have, and based on the requirements of the state is that you have to have a budget adopted. But again, if you don't render the services, you don't have to expend those dollars for those services. So yes, you have an opportunity to not do it. And that's all a board decision based on what direction the board is wanting to go, based on, again, the community, the needs of the district, the attendance, the actual budgetary allotments that the state's going to give the district. All those factors are going to have to come into play when that final decision is made.
And as regards raises for teachers, I'm sure HR can develop that information. I did see a survey that Mr. Morrison shared with me that talked about what schools are doing. Didn't have everybody, but there are some that have given 1.5%, 2%, many more are thinking, and a number of them said not doing. So it's all over the place. And I think the major unknown that we're grappling with is what funding is going to be. April, the state revenues were down 22%. If you look at year to date, however, though, because the beginning of the fiscal year for the state was so good, it's actually up 5.4%. However, we still got May, June, et cetera, to get through. So if we're still looking at 20% decreases per month, then we're probably, and of course, oil and gas being where it tanked, impacted that, sales tax impacted that. So it's really an unknown. The biggest question we're asking is, are we going to get the state funding that's in the second year of the biennium? And it's one of those, it depends on who you talk to. I did write to TEA and I got an answer actually late Sunday night saying, well, at this point, we don't know any different and you're not going to get a better answer than this. So that's one thing we want to guard against. We did extend contracts to people. So I think our teachers know that they have a position, but we're going to have to look at where every nickel is going to be sure that everything we're spending is focused on getting these children educated, because their needs also are going to be very different from, I'm not an educator, but everything I read says when they come back, they've lost a lot of ground, and we're going to have to be creative in how we address that and keep our money towards that.
Right. But I think that it's a significant issue if you're already 4 to 7% behind. If other districts decide not to give a raise, they're still ahead of us. So we still fall I mean, we're still gonna be behind. So we'll have to really look at it and see if it makes financial sense. But especially if teachers are, if you're saying that when teachers come back, they're gonna have to do even more work to catch their students up. To do that at a lesser pay is definitely concerning. But if you'll just put it on the line item for the budget
Sure.
meeting and see what we can look at and see what the consensus of the board is.
Yeah, and I know there's not a soul in this meeting that doesn't agree with you as to the importance of retaining the very best, because our children will need that. So we'll do that.
Yeah, we'll have those numbers for you. I'll get with HR and finance, and we'll kind of come up with some scenarios of 1%, 2%, 3%, something like that, and then let the board decide as to how you guys want to move forward. Absolutely.
Any other questions for me? No. All right. Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to information item C, furniture updates. Dr. Dan Vera.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. So I wanted to share with the board just a couple of pictures that are in the board agenda packet. I'm not sure if you had a chance to see them, but we're trying to move forward and complete our furniture delivery and installation for a couple of reasons. One, we're very fortunate that we are able to be able to have this furniture for our students. We had talked about doing it long before the COVID situation occurred, but it's even more important now for our families to put their minds at ease when they come back from their time off. I'm hoping that they will be able to relax and know that they're walking into classrooms that have furniture that's never been used. It's brand new. There's not been anybody sneezing on it or coughing on it, and there's no potential COVID infections on this new furniture. The problem is that auctioning off that furniture in the classrooms that is used and that is during this COVID crisis, finding people that want to buy that is going to be a difficult task, but we are working very diligently on trying to get that taken care of. I sent a schedule to the board to show what remains from our phase 1 of implementing into the elementary schools and secondary schools. We should be finishing that up. We are storing the furniture currently in our gyms, and then we are making room. We're looking at the potential of getting some storage containers to put the used furniture in until we are able to have a time where the auctions are going to move that a little faster. But in the meantime, we want to get our furniture in for our kids, put their minds at ease. Phase 2, remember, is the cafeterias and the libraries that came up a little bit earlier today. We want our parents to be able to walk in and our kids to be able to walk in and and use cafeteria tables and libraries that again are clean and new and don't show any signs of wear. There's going to be a different way of doing business next year, and we know that. We know that because of this crisis, we're having to rethink how we do things, and so we're wanting just to do the best we can for our community and for our students, and hopefully we'll be able to get this done in a timely fashion before the school year starts. At least that's our goal. Do you have any questions for me? Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Fisher? I think he might have got kicked off. I don't see him. Monique, you want to carry on? Or Mr. Velasco?
I can confirm that Mr. Fisher is not on this call, and I'm not sure if Ms. Celadon. Hello?
So
Esteemed
with
board
Johnny
members, I
being the
don't see
one that-
them. There, I see Mr. Fisher President Fisher coming in now.
Okay.
Hi, Council. Sorry, got dropped. Okay,
I think you can go to your next agenda item if there's no question, Mr. Fisher.
okay. Any questions, or is everybody good? All right, we'll
Good.
now move on to the next agenda item, which will be, we're going to go to action items, which is fifth golden penny on 2020-2021 tax rate. Finance Department.
Right, so this is Ellen again, and greetings to you all. This item is put on here because this was something that House Bill 3 authorized you to do. When House Bill 3 was set in place during the last legislative session, they set tax rates for last year and they compressed tax rates for this year. The state actually will perform a calculation on that and will tell us in the summer what that rate is. It's been developed on a 4.01 overall state property value increase. And property values, of course, are assessed as of January 1. However, from talking with the Travis Central Appraisal District, they're very concerned about the number of protests. So like everything else, property values are a wild card as well. However, that said, they did provide that the highest that the rate could be is in the letter 0.9164 or 91.5 cents. Currently, we're at 93 cents. So what they have authorized is at the time that the board chooses to set its levy for next year's budget, which would be later, August, September, most likely September, if you have given yourself permission to levy an additional golden penny, and I'll explain what that is, then you may do so. So a golden penny is something that gives you more yield for the penny than you would get based on your own property value. So we're getting around 50 some odd cents, but this would give you, or $50, this would give you $96 and change per weighted average daily attendance. Overall, that's $1.2 million more, and about 60% of that actually comes from the state. So I did receive a question today, what impact would that have on a taxpayer? So a couple of things, that the school tax rate would not be higher than this year because you can't have a tax rate that would be as high even as this year. Your max would be 9164. And if you levy the golden penny, then it would be 9264. However, all of the property values have to be weighed in as well. So it remains to be seen, but that's the maximum they told us it would be. So what the legislature invoked is that if you want to do this, then you have to unanimously of the people at the meeting vote to do it. So what we wanted to do, and as you heard, you've got people clamoring for additional needs. This would give you the option of levying an additional penny at such time as you do set the tax rate for next year. And so we're recommending it because anything that affords you options is something we believe you should consider.
I have one additional comment, Ellen. Could you go over the amount of increase that you had provided when I asked that question on a standard household? Could you go over?
So, all right. So last year's average property value for residents was 172,000, and the Travis Central Appraisal District did not increase residences this year. So we can actually use that same number. So an additional penny would be $17.20 a year on. So under $20 for the whole year for an average home in our district, if you did in fact levy that penny. And that's not more than last year. It's just, and the way I answered that, I tried to be careful. It would still be less than this year because it's not 93 cents. And the property value of the home is the same. So we don't have that factor. But if you didn't take the golden penny, then it would be a difference of $17 to that average home.
Are there any additional questions? Right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the golden penny for the 2021 tax rate.
I make a motion to accept item A as presented.
I have a motion from Ms. Cortez. Do I have a second?
I will second it, Mr. Fisher, only due because of it is an optional ability for the board at a later time. So it's still optional.
Okay, I have a second from Mr. Samaripa. Mr. Samaripa,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes, because I agree with what Sam just said.
Ms. Cortez. I'm sorry. You already said yes. Mr. Velasco,
Yes.
Ms. Cerna,
Yes.
Ms. Celadon. Her mic may still be messed up. And Elmer Fisher, yes. And Monique, if you can send it in the chat or raise your hand. I don't know if she's on or not. Is she still on? I don't think she.
She's joining us. 1 second.
Okay.
Comes. Ms. Seldon, can you hear us?
She's on mute.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank goodness. Thank you.
We were just entertaining, we've had a motion and it's been voted on. It's 6-4 for the fifth golden penny. For action item A, Miss Celadon, and I don't know if you heard it or not.
I did.
Okay.
I did. And then I got kicked off. So I would vote yes.
Okay. So let it show that it passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, next, we're going to move on to action item B, consideration and approval of purchase of Content Keeper web filtering appliance and service. Mr. Alfredo.
Good evening, President Fisher, esteemed members of the board, Dr. Avery. This evening, we have a few items we'd like to have you consider. The first one, as you mentioned, is the Content Keeper. It is a content filter. Just for a quick rundown, a content filter is what allows us to apply restrictions to what staff, students will be able to see inside the Manor ISD network with Manor ISD devices on internet, on websites, whether it's Chrome, whether it's Safari, any website, we have access to be able to make those restrictions. And per the laws of SIPA, the Child Internet Protection Act, we must have a internet filter in place, and they're called different things: content filter, web filter, but in this case, I'll keep referring to it as content filter. The purpose of us bringing this to you is, first, it was an item that we put out on the bond 2019 because the previous one that we had many deficiencies. It was very not user-friendly for the staff or instructional staff to be able to isolate specific videos on YouTube. You either blocked all of YouTube or allowed it all to come on. Now we'll be able to, for academic purposes, have teachers being able to request specific videos that can actually be played without the rest of those streaming services. So it's very robust. The great thing is that it will also filter Manor ISD devices outside of our network. That's always been an issue in the past whenever we've had homebound students or any students that have needed to take their devices home. The filter we have right now would not, we would have to purchase another filter or an add-on in order to get that one to work at the home or off Manor ISD network. This one will follow the student or staff back to our content filter at in our district office. So no matter where they are, as long as it's the Manor ISD device, we will be able to maintain all the filtering profiles as we would if they were inside our classrooms or offices. One great thing about this is that we have been testing it. We like to test a lot, and we've been testing it with the devices we've been able to loan out to students during this pandemic. So, and we've had great results from it. It's worked really well. And so it also provides us with auditing of reports, of searches, and key to social and emotional learning is that it can also alert us if any students start to engage in searches of keywords that are life-threatening. And there on the screen, it talks about suicide prevention and violent acts. Certain alerts would go to whomever we decide to get those alerts, so that can kind of key us in that we definitely need to be conscious of any of those types of searches. And as I mentioned, it has the YouTube integration, so we can definitely by video clip be able to allow those those clips onto student devices, which in the past we have not been able to. So it's Content Keeper, 3-year service quote, and the amount is $118,098.80. And that also includes a actual physical device in our data center, so that limits the amount of time that they have to go. It has to go out into the cloud to find profiles.
So, no, Anna, did you want to go?
It's fine. Well, just a quick question.
Yes.
Alfredo, is this in addition to what we have, or will it replace?
It will replace the current one we have. Is over 5 years old, and the capacity is not keeping up with the times right now. And I'll give you I have to be very careful about how I word this, because it will really protect our staff and students against any links that are posted out there that could lead to potential malware. We right now, it's hard for us to be able to manage that when they're out of our network, but with this program, it'll really be able to take care of us. So it's definitely going to replace the current one we have. Expires in June.
Thank you.
So how have we tested how well this works with student, not only student apps, but potential? I don't know what UIL is going to do in the upcoming year, if it's going to be some type of virtual component to it, or the history program. Or are we going to be able to have access to, if there's a program that might catch some of these keywords, that we're able to unlock it for students that are participating in these activities?
Absolutely. And a perfect example of that, Ms. Thomas, are biology classes. Biology classes, whenever they start talking about anatomy, absolutely. And we have a great relationship with, we are working together with curriculum and instruction. So we definitely, I'm familiar with the situations, not with UIL, but whenever we do have to open it up, and definitely we work hand in hand with those departments, with those teachers and programs.
All right, thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Alfredo, would this be coming out of your budget?
This is a bond package for the device. So yes, it would be coming out of my allocation for the bond. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? I'll entertain a motion to accept item C.
I motion to accept.
It's item B. Is it B?
I'm sorry. Item B. I'm sorry. I'll entertain a motion to accept item B.
I enter a motion to accept item B.
I have a motion from Ms. Thomas. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Ms. Serna. Mr. Samaripa,
Yes.
Ms. Celadon,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Velasco,
Yes.
Elmer Fisher, yes. Let it show that it passes 7-0. All right, we'll now move on to action item C.
Yes, President Fisher, the next item is for the consideration of disaster recovery additions, recovery server upgrades and storage additions. 2 years ago, this board was generous to allow us to use the it was part of the 2016 bond for disaster recovery. And we were able to set up the first disaster recovery setup in the district. So that allows us for online storage backup to a remote location. And that was set up at 75%. This would allow us to get 100%. We're already backing up all the critical systems, Skyward, email, and this would allow us to capture everything onto the disaster recovery site. As it's currently in place, this will also give us additional compute increased power, which again, the board was generous in the program that we picked out was Dell Technologies VX Rail, which you don't have to throw out the processor when it's not computing as fast. You add additional modules and stuff. So that's what the last item is there on the Presidio VX Rail additions. And then that's the additional power increase. And this would give us also the ability to manage users as they're putting files on shared drives and their U drives in the district. We currently don't have that management system. And so all those 4 items in the supporting documents are included in this entire package.
So this might be a question for Dr. Avery in finance. Has there been a code created? Because I know you were working on it for COVID, since this particular purchase is directly related to COVID, just in case the government reimburses us for this. So is that already on there for this?
There is codes for the COVID, but this is the disaster recovery is something that the district has invested in way before the COVID epidemic. It's just really a safeguard of all the critical documentations for the district. And what happened before 16 is that everything was done within the district. This disaster site is off of the main district site, and so it's just really more of recovery. I don't think this will be reimbursable through the COVID side of it. But we are actually coding everything that we can for COVID, expenditures in order to get reimbursed through the federal government if we can state. But I don't think this would be one of those. But I think, Alfredo, it is E-ratable.
No, this was unfortunately it's not E-ratable, but I think Ms. Thomas, so disaster recovery, essentially everything that we're storing onto Skyward, everything that we're storing onto email, there is an instantaneous backup to a site that's located outside of our central administration building. That data center that you see with the blue lights as you walk by with the windows, should something happen to that building, we would have a complete backup of all of our digital files, all of our critical documents that are stored online. We would have access to those through the addition. We currently do, but only at 75%. So this would take us up to 100% on the archival of those.
Right. I completely understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is if we're increasing it by 25%, because now our digital footprint has increased, because now all of our instruction is online. Now all of our communication is based on email. So now it's more of a capacity that we need to increase.
Sure.
Is part of that at being able to be charged back to the federal government, because we wouldn't need that capacity if we weren't in this online process, is what I was trying to convey.
I hear you, Ms. Thomas. And I mean, one could make that argument that you just mentioned, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's definitely something that I would get with Ms. Ellen Scoviera to see if the increase in the that first item, the Isilon additions, that's the actual 400 terabyte hard drives that we would be installing, to see if that has any potential for reimbursement. I could definitely take that with Ms. Ellen.
So this is Ellen, and so there's 2 things. There's COVID and there's FEMA. This would not qualify for FEMA because FEMA is personal protective health, safety, sanitation, prevention. There are COVID funds coming in the form of CARES, C-A-R-E-S. DEA is expected actually tomorrow to have a more robust call about those funds. They'll come from the state or the federal government through the state. So We have not had guidance on that yet, but certainly once we get it, we're tracking what we're spending money on for COVID. I don't know that they would require that kind of tracking for the CARES money as they do for FEMA.
Yeah, so yeah, I definitely understand. What I'm saying is, if it's even a potential for us to get reimbursed for at least for the increase that we're doing, then it might be beneficial for at least us to put that code on there. And then if it's an option later on, at least we have it available and able to justify why we put the code on.
Okay, well, we certainly are going to track everything we can lay our hands on because we don't want to lose any money that we don't need to lose. So FEMA, just as information, only reimburses 75%. So we already have that obligation, but I'm hoping that the CARES money that comes through will give us a much needed boost.
We would definitely look at all options. Anything that we can, we will, and we'll make sure that we can try to get, you know, some of that reimbursement if we can. So most definitely we'll explore all those options for you as well.
All right, thank you.
All right, do we have any additional questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion for action item C.
I'll make
a motion.
action item C.
Yes.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Ms. Celadon and I have a second from Ms. Thomas. Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Celadon,
Yes.
Mr. Samaripa,
Yes.
Mr. Velasco,
Yes.
Ms. Cerna,
Yes.
and Mr. Fisher, yes. Let it show that it passes 7-0. All right, we'll now move on to action item D, consideration and approval of purchase of end user devices for students and staff.
Thank you, President Fisher. A couple of years for the last year, but since we started planning for a bond 2019, one of the items we definitely wanted to have on there was the replacement of outdated devices, devices that were operable to a website at best, but not able to engage in online testing. Approximately 5,000 older iPads that were purchased 5, 6, 7 years ago. And so that was the first item, as well as the devices for teachers as well. Teachers that were having laptops that still had a CD-ROM or a DVD-ROM player inside. So you can only guess that was pretty old, and yet they were still working with it, but without being able to update to the latest operating system, to the latest security updates of that operating system. So that was one of the issues. We wanted to bring also equity onto the district with updated devices so that it would be equalized, so that this ABC campus would elementary would have the same proportion of devices as CBS campus. And so that was something else that we were looking at. So a total of 5,500 student and 1,200 staff devices is what we started this process looking at. Created a technology advisory committee. The Tools for Innovation Advisory Committee is actually what it was called. And these were a teacher and a campus administrator from each of the campuses. And then we had some central office folks. And so about 50 that we had to, let's get together and let's see what we want, because I've always said at all the bond meetings, I'm not going to make the decision of which device, but we definitely need to replace these devices, the existing devices that we would need to replace. And so here's the Technology Advisory Committee. And as you can guess, over the last few weeks, we've had lots of meetings on Zoom. There's more, as you know, on Zoom, it only puts so many pictures up on one page. And so we've had, you can see teachers, we've had principals, central office folks engaging in sessions presentations by Dell, Lenovo, partnered with CDW, and also Apple, using that across with Zoom. Now, the recommendations, the way we set up this group is that we had K through 2 groups, 3 through 5, 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. So, and we assigned a teacher to a campus member to kind of run those groups after we met as a team and really come to a consensus on of the devices that they saw. And there were vendors, even though all of this was virtually, we did have vendors that lent out devices. And so my department was able to hand those out to teachers on a scheduled basis over at the central office so that they could actually feel, what this device would look like, and then participate in the demonstrations virtually. When they came back to a consensus, when they came back after seeing all of the presentations, the consensus from each of the grade level groups was that they wanted to go with an Apple device for students and an Apple device for staff as well. And so that is the breakdown of those devices are the ones that I included in the update that I sent y'all this afternoon at noon of the cost breakdown for the 7th generation iPad with a 10.2 inch Retina display. And then you have option A and option B, one with a keyboard, which the teachers in the 3rd through 5th said we definitely need something with a keyboard. K through 2 says no, they're still learning all the tactile and everything like this, so we don't need a keyboard. And these were ideas that were really refreshing to hear from actual educators, from practicing our own practicing teachers and campus administrators over what they saw would be the benefit for this device with their students. So we took a position where we just got, I want y'all to talk, I want y'all to hash it out and so forth, and come to a consensus. So these are the ones that we're looking at for your approval. There's items on here with a protective case that's 4-foot resistant, 4-foot drop resistant, with a keyboard, without a keyboard. Then there is the MacBook Air with a 1.1 gigahertz, and quad core essentially means you have 4 engines running on that device with the latest Intel, with the 10th generation Intel processor on there. And you have those devices as well as the price of those devices, as well as the additional asset tagging and all the background work that would be necessary for such a large deployment. And I have the proposal there for y'all. I would certainly be open to any questions. One more thing. Well, I'm sorry, one more thing. I did list some of the comments from the committee. It was so refreshing to work with these teachers because they were saying, yeah, here's what's going to happen when you put this device in front of this student or these students. That we have a lot of information. We garnered a lot of information. This great group of educators before they came to a consensus. I'm sorry, Ms. Thomas.
No, so thank you for putting all this together, and thank you to the committee. But my major concern when looking at it, I didn't see whether, because I know from other districts that the Wi-Fi sticks are on back order. Are they going to be ordered separately? Because we got to create some equity for the students that are in the boonies. And then for teachers, they didn't sign up to have their internet be used by the school district. So are we going to pay them for that, or are we going to provide that to them?
Thank you, ma'am. And we'll backtrack about 3-4 weeks. No, I'm sorry, I lost my train on my weeks there, but we have already provided students with MiFi devices for the campus principals that reached out to, they reached out to all of their students through their teachers to find out who needed those. And you bring up a good point. There are some rural areas where they don't have access to broadband services. So
right.
we were fortunate that y'all agreed to, we set up a purchase for 1,000 of the Verizon MiFis, and then the ongoing service. So we have those in place, and I feel really comfortable with the numbers that the teachers are reporting about. The ones that really need it, they've come up and picked those up. So we actually already have those, and we beat the rush. And I think you alluded to the fact that they might be running out. They are. We were able to order them before the massive back order that still exists today.
So that my question was, are we going to be providing it to teachers? And then 2, will they be on these new devices? Because if we get, of course, each year we get new students. So if they're on back order, what is going to be the other option if we get more students that are in need?
Yes, ma'am. Right now, we're looking in speaking to all the vendors that we spoke with. We're looking at a 4 to 6 weeks for deployment, for it to arrive. So that's a little sense of urgency here. Is that we want to make sure that they're in place before August, the last week of July, so that my team has the time to be able to allocate it to the right campuses. I'm going to be working to ensure that equity. That equity part is huge, and so I'm going to be working to make sure that the numbers are going correctly, corresponding to that student enrollment. So if we get it, if we turn it in before the end of here shortly, we'll make sure they're there before the start of school.
Now, what about the question about the teachers? Is it something that we're providing to them as well? Or what's the plan for them?
For the MiFi devices, we did open up for principals to communicate with us if any teachers or, and here's one we may not have brought up, front office administrative staff that's still doing the attendance, that's still doing all those reports that may not have access to the broadband services. So not just the teachers, but other administrative staff there in the front office. Yes,
So-
ma'am, we are addressing those.
So can we get those numbers? I mean, if this is approved, can we get the latest numbers, since they're 4 to 6 weeks behind, just to make sure that everybody has the capability to be up and running by August?
Yes, ma'am. If this is approved, I'll be on the phone and making sure. But I've had the guarantees. I've had the guarantees that they would be here before the students come back in August, ma'am.
Yeah, I just don't want a whole group of teachers who don't have access to internet or using their own internet that we're not paying for, to also not have the opportunity for us to get this for them if it's possible.
Yes, ma'am. And one thing that you brought up earlier that I certainly would like to bring up is that I'll also work with Miss Ellen on reimbursable given the pandemic situation.
That would be great.
Alfredo, real quick.
Yes.
How long did you already state how long you guys were working on, how long this committee was working on this, trying to get all this together?
Well, we started back in February with an in-depth survey that we wanted to provide the vendors with what we were looking at. And then our goal was to have the presentations in April in person. April, Ms. Corte, and I'm not apologize, but just, I mean, we just have been so inundated with helping out with the students with the iPads and making sure that they had devices. So we had to push this back to May. So over the last 3 weeks, we've been doing all the virtual conversations with the vendors and then amongst ourselves.
Thank you.
Mr. Alfredo, I only see the user agreement. How much is this going to cost?
The final amount at the very bottom of the, and I apologize, I think the agenda that's on the updated agenda, that agenda item that I emailed.
Okay, got it.
Alfredo, I have a couple of, well, just one major question, I guess.
Yes, sir.
You have other potential vendors that actually could have provided the services. How did y'all evaluate all three, and did costs come into consideration on the whole picture? Because you know, I've been talking about Apple, you know, that they may be a little pricey. They've come down a little bit maybe, but what were the cost comparison of the three? Because I don't see any cost comparison other than what the Apple proposal was for.
Yes, sir. I'll answer the question that you had about was cost an issue. When we first started with the presentations, costs, I did not want to ask teachers to be, I did not want cost mentioned. I wanted the ability for that device to be able to assist them in their role as a teacher. So
Okay.
so that for the first most. And so we did an evaluation of the devices. Then before learning the cost, I put up budgetary numbers, but we had not sought the actual quotes from the company yet. I put up budgetary numbers for them, and we reached, and and I say we, I'm sorry, we as an entire group, but I really allowed the teachers to really kind of carry those conversations on their own as to what they were seeing without any kind of influence from us. And then when they saw like this quote right here, we had a meeting even as late as this morning, and I'm like, does this change anything? I don't want to influence, but I want to make sure if it doesn't. And we heard from each of the subgroups, no, they were still going with their original consensus of the Apple devices.
So when you compared all three, you had a comparison where Apple actually gave you everything that you needed to have at this price, I guess. But I don't see what the other one's capabilities were at their prices. It's what I don't have a comparison of.
And that's certainly something I could send to you. I can tell you, as you alluded to, it wasn't the least expensive solution by any means, not by any means. I'm going to try to get to my numbers. The difference in the iPad versus a Chromebook was about $80 for the devices that are going, and that's and it's really what I attempted to do was make a and I don't want to use the popular fruit because that's also the name of one of the companies. So let's just say that from a bananas to bananas a comparison. And it was a little difficult because some don't require a case, some do require a case. If it's a foldable device, then it doesn't require a case. But if it's a tablet, it does require a case. Some have a built-in keyboard, some don't. So there were several variables on there, and I can tell you that. So it was really hard to kind of give that kind of comparison. But my best bet effort on the iPad versus a Chromebook was that it's about $80 difference, actually a little on the lower side. I'm getting a $76.15 difference between the $499 iPad and a Chromebook. The next.
So what's that total amount though? I mean, I could do the math, but I would like you to just tell me what the total amount would be.
Oh, I'm sorry, the total amount of the package?
Yes, the difference.
Okay. Oh, okay. On the student devices, the total amount, the difference would be $418,825.
Okay, and is that total for all the devices or just the students?
That is for the students. I'm calculating the teacher device. And while I'm calculating on this, I will tell you that I've been listening in on what Ms. Ellen was talking about with Cardonics and total number of professionals and everything. So we're going to be we potentially may be revisiting that 1,200 and looking at all professionals to make sure we have an accurate count of our staff number. Okay, so that is a fluid number right there. On the comparison on the Apple MacBook, which has a value, which is being sold to us for $1,147, the Dell Latitude has a value of $846. So there is a $300 difference right there. If we were to go with, if we were to go with the 1,200 units, so that's 360,024 of a difference just in the staff devices.
So is it that much better to be able to spend almost $800,000? I mean, considering what we're talking about is one, trying to give the very best technology to our students, but also being able to maintain this bond in a way that we respect the other items within it, especially since technology is going to be thrown such a curveball this year that we don't know what it's going to look like. We might be buying a lot more than what we initially allocated to you just because of the nature of COVID.
Yeah, and trust me, I'm very well aware of that. So I'll tell you that the big from conversations with the teachers, one of the things that from the MacBook is the ability to use Apple Classroom, which allows them to see the script, to be able to manage the screens of the students. That's just a natural part of the Apple OS system. So they go into Apple Classroom and they can see the screens. They can they can stop a particular students, freeze all the screens. That's something that comes natural with Apple OS. The other devices, that would be an extra add-on in order to get that. They also find the ability to do the airdrop, where they're able to, the students are able to send a file, retrieve a file without the need to upload it onto an email device or to a website. It can be very instantaneous if you guys have ever experienced that. Again, this is coming from the comments that the teachers reported.
I'm 100% for the new technology. I'm questioning this 800,000. If we could get the same technology and have some other, either apps or add-ons that won't cost close to $1 million, would be beneficial, because we don't know where we're going to need this $1 million in the future, or 800,000. I don't want to add 200,000 to it, but.
And one other item that I included in the listing is the buyback, the potential, the amount of buyback that the 5,500 and the 5,500 older iPads, is that there is a buyback program that Apple submitted as a quote, depending on the condition, but the maximum that we would be able to get, and that was a little over 500,000.
But I thought we were utilizing those now to be able to bridge the technology gap for students. So what would happen to those students? I mean, we would get new computers, but we would still have a whole group of students that we need.
Yes, ma'am. And we still have additional devices that aren't as old as the ones that we were, that we purchased 2 years ago. So we're not, that's not the entire inventory. That's the oldest inventory that we have right now. And those are the ones that they would purchase, the ones that unfortunately do sit and are only that can only be used in a limited capacity, because of they can no longer upload to or update to the most recent operating system because they're so old.
Alfredo, and how old are those iPads or MacBooks? How old are those?
We have 2012, 2013 models, Mr. Fisher, and there's quite a few. So all the way back to 2011 and 2012 models. The newer ones would be the ones that were purchased through bond for Lagos Elementary, New Tech Middle, and Senior High School.
Got it.
And this was the recommendation of the administration and the committee, correct?
It's actually, I want to flip it around. I want to say it was the consensus of the committee. Again, as an administrator, I really stood back and I listened to what the teachers, campus administrators were saying, and then they eventually came to a consensus. So yes, ma'am.
Alfredo, one other question about the quantity. You had, for student devices, you have 3,500. What is that going to do to our student capacity? Is that going to give each one an iPad, or what is it going to do for us?
That will replace the existing devices that we had that are old, the aged existing devices. I will make it that's my goal, is to make sure that they're equalized among elementary schools, that the middle schools are equalized among them, so that the ratio will be similar at elementary schools, at middle, and then at high school. So that'll be my role, is to make sure that that's equal.
So you're saying that we will not need any more than 3,500 iPads?
Those are the ones with the those are adjusted for the ones with the keyboards or no keyboards. The 35 The 3,500 are the ones with the keyboards. The 2,000 are the ones without keyboards, because those, as I look to putting those in the K through 2 classrooms, and those are the teachers, we heard straight from the teachers that we don't need a keyboard, just give us a hard shell.
So total is 5,500 units to
Yes,
be
sir.
used by the staff, by the,
By the students, yes.
right, okay.
So I'm with Mr. Samaripa. So the question is, if we purchase 5,500 student computers, we have over 9,000 students in the district. What happens to the other half of the kids? And if we bought the lesser computer of 800,000, will we be able, I know he didn't add this part, but will we be able to service more students if we were able to mitigate that cost and buy more of the lesser computers?
The short answer is that, I mean, absolutely. If you were to buy less, if you were to buy the computers that weren't as expensive, both on the student and on the staff, you would be able to generate, be able to get more devices. Absolutely.
But so the second half of the question is, how do we serve the other students? What happens to the other, 4,500 students or 4,000 students that won't receive these devices?
And it's important to know that it's not that there are still devices at the campuses. We are not, this is not a complete replacement. So we would not just have 5,500 devices out there. We would have there are approximately 5,000 additional devices out there, approximately 5,000 devices actually out there. When I mentioned the campuses, the brand new campuses, so when you add those, you still have a total of approximately 10,000 devices out there.
So we have enough for each one of our students and teachers.
On the iPad side, because our enrollment is approximately 9,600, so if we were to get 5,500, if we were to get take the 5,500 out, but then add it back again with the students, and I'm looking right now at some raw numbers here of approximately 5,000 fifth and sixth generation iPads that are out there. So there would be enough. It would be my job to make sure they get routed that way, and how we distribute these to the campuses to make sure that there would be a device per student. But that would be my goal, to try to make that work.
Tell me a little bit about your experience and how much better this the Apple is compared to the other systems that we looked at.
It would be kind of unfair for me to say take any kind of preference, because as my own personal background, I've worked with all different devices. So I've worked with Windows, I've worked with Apple, I've worked some with and when I say Windows, Windows software, Chrome OS. So the key, and because I've been out of the classroom for so long, the key would be, let's hear from the educators and how they would best use these devices. And so that's why I keep referring back to the folks you see up here on your screen. And I included some comments on there about what they were saying they found to be beneficial of this device over the other ones that they saw.
Okay, and we have been using this type of device.
Yes, we have, and we also, I'm sorry.
So if we were to go with something different, then we would be transitioning our staff and students into something that they're not quite used to.
And that was a comment that came out from a couple of in the discussions, is that why do a learning curve? Why extend the learning curve right now in the middle of this remote learning possibility for students to be able to use a device that they already know, for teachers to be able to use a device that they already know? So those were comments that I kept hearing from the educators over the preference they had between the Apple and the other vendors that they saw.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
So these 6,379 devices that are potential buybacks to give us approximately a high end of 525,000, are these devices ones that we already have in the district, or are these devices some of our students have at home, but we're going to get back? And are we going to be, and I'm not sure if you answered this question clearly. Are we going to have one-on-one or one-on-one devices, or, I'm not sure if you answered that question, or I didn't hear you.
Okay, no, that was never brought up, and I want to put that off to the side for a moment and address the first question you said about are some of these devices that we issued? Absolutely, devices that we're currently principals are currently contacting parents to come and pick up, to come and bring back if they're not going to be involved in summer programs. Along with the MiFis. So that process is ongoing right now. So yes, some of those are devices that we have issued out. You mentioned one-to-one, and I had a couple of committee members bring that up. That is not the intention of this, because that is a decision that would need to be made by the campus, because you have accountability from the campus standpoint, from a student standpoint, from the family, from the community. There's quite a bit of it's quite a large process to get into that. So I told the group that this wasn't about one-to-one, but definitely want to make sure that they knew that it was a bigger process than just saying this is for one-to-one. Yeah.
But then my understanding is that we will have enough technology for all the students and staff. I think you were answering Ms. Thomas's question, and somehow I understood that.
From a raw, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
From a raw number standpoint, yes. Okay. From a raw number standpoint, would there be enough devices if we have 9,600 students and we have, and I forgive me, I'm going to make a quick calculation here on my computer. My apologies.
And as you do that, can you include also the buyback? So if you take them out of the equation, will we still have the sufficient number of either iPads or computers?
The buyback would yield us an additional 1,000 student devices, at least. I just did a raw 500,000 on that one. And the question about if we had with our current inventory and the number of the devices that we would be purchasing, yet we would have over 10,000 devices.
And that's if you take the buybacks out of the equation.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the total package here for the overall price is, I'm trying to find, I know it's somewhere here, because you just sent it to us today. So 100.
Alfredo, can you tell us the overall price?
Yes, ma'am. The overall price, and that's for all of the 5,500 and the 1,200, is $4,265,600. That also includes the crayons. I'm sorry, why did I say crayons? the stylus, the Logitech stylus that we even had some teachers in the math program that were saying these would be awesome for students to be able to do their calculations up on their screen. So that would include that, as well as the asset tagging, the encasing, putting the devices into the case, which is very protective. So it's done a certain way, and then the enrollment into our management system, so that those that ability of managing device that I've been mentioning, they could be included in there.
Now, would you add a COVID code to this as well? Since we wouldn't be, I'm trying to add it to everything.
No, I hear you.
We wouldn't be purchasing 5,500 computers if we wasn't all at the house. So.
Yes, ma'am. No, you brought up a really good point there at the beginning. Absolutely. One of the things areas that I failed to mention was that from a technical standpoint, is that the area that's included in the additional offerings that doesn't have a price includes the ability, among many things, the ability for our technicians to have access to all of Apple's technical information that typically when you go to one of their stores, they're the only ones that can pull that information up. That would be given to us, and then our technicians would have the ability our department would have the ability to become certified as Apple technicians. So rather than to have to send the device off, we could actually handle it, and Apple would send the parts in and certify that aspect. So that'd be also a good addition for any kind of internship in CTE for that for folks wanting to go into a technical field.
Mr. Loredo, where would this total come out of? Your budget, a bond?
It's in the bond. It would be in the bond budget, Mrs. Serna.
Okay.
Now, was this a original line item for you, or is this an additional, some additional cost because of COVID?
We knew about these devices beforehand. COVID just, what am I trying to say? COVID really spelled out the need to have the devices.
And probably the time frame of having to speed up to get it.
Yes, ma'am. Especially, and one thing that I know Dr. Yearwood has been talking about was the summer program, the remediation, not just the standard, not passing the grades, but other opportunities that they're offering, reading academies and so forth that have necessitate students needing to have that device in hand. So all that because students have not been in the traditional classroom that we're all accustomed to.
And again, this is Dr. Yearwood chiming in here. And thank you, Alfredo. That was one of the beauty about the, utilizing the iPads is the richness that it allows in the academic environment, since it allows for varied approaches. There are tons of app-based products now versus just using the product for a typewriter, a glorified typewriter, which lends itself to helping students that are struggling or helping students to basically have an opportunity to explore utilizing the platform. So absolutely right. We were, I know on the academic front, we were very excited about what has evolved from the committee regarding the iPads. Thank you for that.
So Alfredo, I have a question. I know that, you guys were looking at probably buying additional iPads and notebooks. Were you anticipating spending $4 million out of your budget? Did you increase that, or is this what you're going to spend?
I'm sorry, Mr. Fisher, out of the bond budget?
Out of the bond budget.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So the bond budget, when we looked at the priorities, initially we started with a number down with 2.5–3 million, but as we started looking more at the needs assessment, it grew much larger. So we're at the 5 million, and so this would be the 4 point. This would take a little bit more than 4 million of that.
So the extra roughly 1.82 million, you're gonna cut that from somewhere else.
Yes, sir. Well, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
With confidence, Mr. Laredo?
Yes, with confidence, because I've spoken with Ellen and I've spoken with our bond, our budget manager. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Considering that we don't know what COVID is gonna do, you might want to just leave it up to we're adjusting and monitoring as necessary. Because if we are out to December, will you be able to have the same amount of confidence that your budget gonna stay within $800,000?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I would say adjust and monitor, friend. Adjust and monitor.
Well, monitoring accountability is key. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Do we have any additional questions?
Alfredo, can you give us later on this, can you give us a breakdown of the bond 2019 bond technology and the line items that we have been approving and where that is going and what we left?
Yes, ma'am. And when President Fisher asked me about am I moving items? Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
But can you provide the board with what the original allocations were, what the additional allocations are, and then label which ones were due to COVID? Because so we can look at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll put the, and I have the budget. I'll work with our budget manager and Ellen tomorrow and go ahead and make those. Which ones are COVID eligible is what we would put.
Yeah, but what I'm asking is what's your original and what are you doing now and what you're cutting? Because
Yes,
also I think most of the board would agree that when you go back to school, we also don't want our kids learning from a deficiency standpoint of technology we were going to use because of something that they couldn't have, having control over, and the district couldn't have any control over. So let's see what it is that you're cutting out.
Yes, ma'am.
So we can make sure our kids still have the best technology possible.
Absolutely. Not a problem, Ms. Thomas and esteemed board members.
Are we ready? Mr. Fisher?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion for item D.
I have a motion from Ms. Celadon. Do I have a second?
I'll
second.
I have a second from Mr. Velasco. Ms. Celadon,
Yes.
Mr. Velasco,
Yes.
Mr. Samaripa,
No.
Ms. Cortez,
Yes.
Ms. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Serna,
Yes.
and Elmer Fisher. Yes. Let it show that it passes 6-4, 1 against.
President Fisher, if I may.
Yes.
The screens you see in a typical in-person board meeting, I would have asked the committee. I know they're listening or they're watching on YouTube. I would have asked the committee to have been present, so to kind of present them to our esteemed board members, so that they know the hard work that these folks have done, teaching classes, doing all the remote learning and everything, but then taking time to participate in all these sessions, long sessions, and debating and many sessions and everything. So I can tell you it's such a boost of energy to work with these educators. So if we can,
So with that, Mr.
Yes, yay.
Mr. Laredo, I'd like to say thank you very much to the committee. Thank you for all of your hard work and all your participation in extending your time, and y'all don't get paid for all of that extra time. So thank you so much for all of the time and effort that y'all have given to our children, to our community, and just, in this project. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Board will now move on to the next item, and we will now move to closed session. The board will now convene in closed session pursuant to the Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 551.129, and 551.074. The time is now 8:01 p.m.